Bonjour, Tansegia.
Hey, how are ya?
It's a smudge fair thoughts.
With Kahiyase.
That's me. And Zosha. Spirit fingers. So on today's episode, we talk to Mo.
Yes, we had a great conversation with getting to know her and talk about her art and her art style, like how her technique, how she got into it and what inspires her to create the art she does. We talk about roller derby. She's in the roller derby, and about how she has really taken on her the culture of her husband's family and like how she does that, why, and kind of what it means to her. It was a really great episode, and we learned some new stuff too.
Yeah, so I hope you learned some stuff too.
Yeah.
Well, with that,
hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Smudge for Your Thoughts, and thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
So would like to start this off by just asking you, what is your name? Where do you come from? And how do you identify yourself? You're a tribe, nation, band, citizen of?
Okay. So my name is Monica Gilles-BringsYellow. My nickname is Mo, and a lot of people will call me that. So I answer to that a lot of the time. I originally am from Great Falls, Montana. I've lived in Montana my entire life. And right now I live in Missoula, but I usually kind of go back and forth between the Flathead Reservation and Missoula. We've lived in Missoula now, I think probably 6 years. And Missoula is always kind of where I like to stay. So I tell people I'm from here now, even though it's probably not true. And I just identify myself as Indigenous. My mom is a Mexican immigrant, but she is a Mexican native. And my dad he's from Montana. And our family has been here a really long time, but we are actually Métis from Canada that is not enrolled because there's a lot of rules about what you can do in Canada and still be enrolled, especially, a long time ago. So I just call myself Indigenous because I'm not enrolled. And that's a whole nother topic as well. And yeah. So, and I mostly identify with my husband's family. I basically got married when I was a teenager, like pretty close to a teenager. And my husband his family is Salish, and on his dad's side, they're Sioux. And so I just feel that when I married him, I married the whole family and the whole culture. And so that's what I'm closest to.
Gotcha. Nice. Thank you for sharing about you. That is something that I think we've talked about before on this podcast about the identifying as you're Mexican, you're like native Mexican, and people kind of forget sometimes, we've talked about this before, people kind of forget sometimes that Mexicans a lot of them are, native.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it's like a Spanish native.
There's a reason in certain like states and certain areas of the country, if you're native, that you get mistaken for like Spanish, for Mexican, and people will talk Spanish to you. Yeah. It's because we're all the same thing.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Like the border doesn't make anything different. Yeah.
Look this way. It bounces that way.
I have a problem with not facing the microphone, and my sound waves like to bounce around the room, so he's
Oh, wow.
So it picks up a lot on his microphone when we're editing.
Oh, no.
Anyway, but yeah, that's so true. We're like, you guys, native Mexican, like the border doesn't define, there's not really a difference between the people just because of the border.
Yeah. And have a really good friend, and her name's Raquel, and she identifies just as Mexican, and her family is Mexican, but she's actually from Detroit, Michigan. And so she went to school with me. Yeah, she went to school with me at the University of Montana, and she liked to talk about like finding exactly where the line is, where people will think you're Mexican and then people move on to thinking that you're Native, like as she's traveling across the country in her car and like having those interactions. And so I thought that was always funny.
That is really interesting. Did she find out the line?
I think she did, and I think she told me. Yeah, but she like just can't remember. I think it's probably in like, I think it's somewhere in the Dakotas. Like obviously,
yeah, makes sense.
Like you kind of just come over and.
Oh, okay, that way instead of gotcha.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah. Gotcha. Nice.
So you said that you identify as Indigenous, as she brought up. I do kind of want to dive into that a little bit if you're comfortable with that.
I'll tell you if I'm not.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Yeah, that's good. Because there is a lot of tribes out there that go by descendancy, or they go by
blood quantum or
blood
something.
quantum or okay. So I'm sorry. Now they're like attacking the dog and cat.
Oh jeez.
So the tribe that you said Menti, do they do descendancy, or are they blood quantum, or how does that kind of work up in Canada?
I think that it's a little bit of both. But the Métis originally, they're usually either Chippewa or Cree, but they can be anything. But they're also mixed in with French, sometimes Irish, Scottish. And so they have their own culture that's kind of based off of that. That's, people that are essentially, it's a mixed blood community. And so, but they still have the same rules as people that aren't like mixed blood communities. So it's really weird. And in Canada, the laws were also really weird. So you could be taken off the rolls for things like if you were a member of the tribe and you were a Native woman, if you married a Native or a non-Native man, they would take you off the rolls and say that you weren't a member of the tribe anymore. If you lived off the reservation, they would take you off the rolls. If you tried to get higher education or if you owned land, they would go through and just wipe you off the list, basically. So the rules there were kind of actually pretty strict in terms of not only do you have to achieve blood quantum, but you also if you did anything that kind of seemed like it was part of the dominant culture, they could, even if you were doing it to survive, they would say, well, you're no longer a member of the tribe. And so you didn't get whatever benefits came with that.
Now, was that up to each individual tribe, or was that?
That was a national law. And I think that I want to say only in the 70s, or maybe even later, did they go back and start reversing that. And so I think they just call it the Indian law. I'm sure there's plenty, but
Wow. You said it was a Canadian law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't hear that either.
Yeah. I think it's the Indian. I think it's just the Indian Act.
Yeah. You be the Native, we think you should be. And if you're not falling in that category, then you're not part of the tribe anymore. Okay.
So if you graduated high school and you tried to go and get secondary education, they could take you off the rolls.
Okay.
Dang.
That's weird.
And say you were no longer a Native.
I'm really happy that is reversed now.
Yeah. And I think now you have a lot of people that can now claim descendancy because they reversed it. But I think they reversed it not that long ago. So that occurred for I want to say 100 years or so, where they kind of went through the same thing that the U.S. did. It seems where they were basically assimilate or die. And so they're trying to destroy the tribes because they don't want to deal with them anymore.
Yeah,
and so they're like, well, if you do anything that seems like you're assimilating, then you can't be Indian.
It's that trap. Like, I just, that's so upsetting.
Yeah. And I think the big one was like land. And so if you owned land that wasn't like communally owned by the tribe, then they just were like, well, you own private property, so you can't be a member here anymore. So if you're living close to the reservation, but off the reservation, you then, you know, like you're probably doing it to survive in some way, but like you have to, you know, there's a consequence for that, even if you're just trying to be a regular person.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds, that's really interesting. That's not, like new knowledge to us. But it sounds like something that would happen with either Canadian or U.S. law. So
yeah.
Wow. So I guess we can move on to like our next question that we generally ask, and that's, so what do you do for a living, and like what are your passions and hobbies?
Okay. So for a living, I'm actually a therapist in a group home, and I work with kids. Most of the kids I work with are under state custody. As their legal guardian. All of them have some sort of mental health diagnosis. And it's a therapeutic intensive group home, so some of their behaviors are a little intense, depending on the kid and the diagnosis and, you know, how that presents. But that's what I went to school for, and that's what I am doing now. And I've worked in the group homes for a really long time. And before I was working in the group homes, I was actually a history teacher. And a reading teacher in a few different places. So that's my day job. My really low key day job is intensive therapy all day. And in my free time, I like to play roller derby when you're allowed to do that. Cool. And right now we're not allowed to do that. You know, so that's the thing. And I'm not good at it. So I'm not trying to like make any pretenses. Like she's like amazing at roller. No, I hit people very hard, and that is pretty much my only skill. And that's why I play roller derby, because I actually like that. And I also paint. I started teaching myself how to paint probably a year and a half ago. And since then, it's kind of taken off into an accidental business. Cool. And that's actually what I do every day. And that's what I prefer to do. And I just like it. Yeah.
Isn't that one of your paintings behind you?
It is.
Nice. I recognize the style. That's really cool looking. Yeah. Your style is very cool.
Mary Sophie. And she's from the Flathead Reservation, and I just love her because it's based off a historical photograph, and she just looks like she's sick of it. Like she's sick of whatever you're bringing. Like she doesn't have time for this, and that's why I picked her, because I love that look.
Yes. I like that idea too.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, your style's like very ethereal, kind of like, is that the way you say the word? Ethereal? Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like really cool style.
I like things that look like they're like maybe you dreamed them.
Yeah, that's like dreamlike. Yeah, I guess so. Like surreal, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And do you usually work with like old photographs or photographs in general, kind of mixed media?
Yes.
Okay.
So I like to do like several things. Kind of a style of, it's kind of like a collage. And so I make the base to the painting, the background, and then from there I kind of decide who makes sense in the background. You know, sometimes I do things very purposefully, but other times I do things accidentally, and just kind of go with whatever I think is whatever it deserves, I guess. And so then after that paint has dried and I've decided who needs to go where, I then go through, find who I want to work with and what kind of story I want to tell through that. And then they go on the top of it. And then it goes underneath a layer of resin after that's all dry and ready to go. And then after the layer of resin is down, I then try to work in painting on top of the resin to create kind of like a 3D effect that you can't really tell in like photographs, because that will also create shadows depending on how thick the resin is. And I might add more resin depending on what I'm trying to do, if I think I want more shadows or if I think I'm good. And so then I just kind of work from there. So my paintings are really, lately they're pretty thick because I'm trying to create that kind of glowy 3D, this doesn't make sense, but it does.
Yeah, cool.
Look.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I think it would be easier to see in person, huh? Because I think when I was looking at your Instagram photos of your art, I did have a hard, like I didn't notice that there was resin, like, that 3D effect. So that'd be really cool to see them in person. Maybe we'll have to.
That's why I'm always complaining about like the photographs, because sometimes the resin reflects back and it'll like make a big shine, or you can see me in the reflection of the resin, like with the cell phone.
Like,
and I'm like, no, I'm not in the painting. In one of my favorite paintings, it's a big painting, so I had to prop it against a door to take a picture of it. And if you look, you can see that there's vitamins on a shelf. Like gosh, reflecting into the gold. And I'm like,
self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care is part of this.
Yeah. Pictures usually do a lot of flattening out of things.
Yeah.
So, what inspires you to like do all of your painting? And I know you said the roller derby, you just like hitting people, but what?
Probably gets a lot of aggression out.
Yeah, like, definitely does. I mean, I played hockey, and that's I
played hockey growing up, and so I played until I was like 14 or 15, and I started probably when I was like, I don't know, like 6 or 7. And so I also played, there wasn't a girls team, so I was the only girl that's on the boys team. And so they let you check, and they don't usually let people check in girls hockey, which is totally lame. And so I like missed that element of like hitting people, like checking people. And so it was weird because it was hard for me to learn how to skate, not on like, ice skates. But like the checking never left, Do you
roller skate or roller blade?
They're roller skates. They're quads.
Oh, interesting.
Those are so hard to.
They are.
It's a whole new skill, and I thought I would just like I would be like, oh, I'm a natural talent. No, I was not. It took me years to like do basic stuff.
I kind of do I'm falling the whole time because so. I'm not good at ice skating either or anything like that. So
she's really not.
Yeah. So I'm a swimmer.
It's a hard skill.
Yeah. So your name is Mo. Is there more to the name
there's so many names. So another hobby of mine is coming up with nicknames.
Okay.
At one point I made a nickname for everyone on my team, and we had a Star Wars base out. And so I renamed everybody with a Star Wars name.
I love it.
And I'm just always coming up with really stupid nicknames. Some of them you can say on air, and some of them you can't. But what was the one? I really love Star Wars, and so one of my nicknames was Han Solo. Or wait, hold on, it's been a while since I skated. Han Somo, that was one. Mon Solo, that was another one. And then my jersey actually says the Mexicutioner. And my number is 1491.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to. We had a Harry Potter themed bout, and I changed my name to Horcrux with a W. Yeah.
That's
And I had told my husband that if I was going to return to roller derby, if it ever came back, that my new nickname was going to be like Boeing 747. It was going to be Mowing 747, and I was going to have a whole thing about come fly the friendly skies.
Nice. What is your? Well, never mind. I was gonna ask, what is your email again? Because I think it was something funny, but I don't want to.
It's Happy. It's a play off Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
So
Happy Gilmo. That was
Happy Gilmo.
Cute one.
Yeah. And now that I watch those movies, I'm like, ooh, that has not aged well, but it still is funny.
Yeah. So for my Missoula peeps and Flathead peeps out there that listen, where can they find like the roller derby and things? I mean, we live there. I didn't even know that there was.
I heard of someone being in a roller derby.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a roller derby there.
We normally play, like when we have home bouts, they were at the fairgrounds. Oh, okay. And we have a website. So if practice ever starts up again, I think it's just Hellgate Roller Derby. If you Google it, because we've got a couple websites, and one of them is the more current, flashy one. But I don't think anybody's like, I'm sure nobody's updating anything because there's nothing to update. But we used to practice at the Sheck, the Sovereign Hope something church. And they had a gym there, and it used to be like Mondays and Wednesdays. We'd have practices.
Or which like intersection or something?
It's called, it's in like Franklin to the Fort. It's right by the mall.
Oh, okay. I know that.
Yeah, it's in that little area. And there's also like a weird dog park that's right down the street. And it's like, and it's just a big church, and there's the church part, and then there's this like, they have like a gym. And so there's like volleyball practices and basketball practices, and then there's roller derby practices. That like, and we all just kind of rented that out and took turns.
Nice.
But yeah, once things start up again, if they do start up, check the website for Hellgate Roller Derby and see what happens.
Check it out.
Yeah, and we also have an Instagram too.
I was gonna say, I bet you guys have like an Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot on it right now, but there used to be more.
Yeah, as you guys get back together, if we're ever allowed to be in contact with other people again. Just kidding.
Yeah, hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. That's cool. I watched one roller derby, like I said, in person before, and it was just a cool, like, fun atmosphere, I feel like. Yeah, it is. Especially, I grew up playing on team sports. Yeah. And it is really inviting, and it was a chance for like, to have me to have a sense of community, even though like I'm not a high school kid, I'm not on a soccer team anymore, and so you have a lot of like-minded people that are also very open-minded. And so it's like a built-in community. I like that. I bet, I could see it being like a tight-knit group.
Yeah. And then like also in Montana, because Montana is so small, you also know all the other people that play in the other communities. Oh, yeah. Especially if you're somebody that's going to travel. Right. So you like have an extended community then, and that's pretty fun too.
That is fun. I like that.
A lot of people wouldn't consider Montana small, but yeah.
A lot of land.
I meant in population.
Yeah.
There are more cows than people in Montana.
Oh yeah, there's way more.
That's so funny.
We talked a little bit about the roller derby. Could we dive into your painting?
Oh yeah,
what inspires you?
The art.
Yeah.
That little portion of my life. So I about a year and a half ago, I had just graduated from grad school. And during grad school, I also still worked in the group home, and I worked full time, and then took full-time credits to graduate grad school. And art was always something that I kind of dabbled in. Like I took art classes in high school. I would take them as electives in college, but it was just something that I was just like, oh, this is kind of fun to do. I can take drawing or I can take billiards. So I'll probably just take drawing, but wasn't really ever serious about it and hadn't made any art or drawn any art in years, basically. And I was really used to, after graduating grad school, I was used to like just being up like all hours of the night, trying to get my work done and like having to light yourself on fire, basically to get like your papers in and to, complete everything that you're supposed to complete and still like, have a life. And so, I didn't really know what to do with all these extra hours. And I've also always been kind of full of myself. And so I got the new job as a therapist, and I wanted to put some art in my office. And I started like shopping around, and I couldn't afford like the stuff that's at the art shows. I knew that much. But also some of the stuff that I saw other people making, I was like, I can do that. Yeah. Even though I had like no evidence that I could do anything at that point, and then I'd go to like big box stores and you could buy big box art, but that just made me mad. Yeah. Like it's like, I can buy a feather for like $40, but this is a terrible feather, like a feather painting. And so I just like, I had extra free time. I was on the internet. And so I started like looking at like painting tutorials on YouTube and stuff like that. And started like being like, oh, I think I can manage this. And started just experimenting. And then I started posting some of those paintings on my Facebook. People would say things to me like, oh, this is really great. Is this for sale? And I like didn't really have an intention of selling anything. I just wanted praise from strangers. And I was just like, at that point I was like, yeah, if it was for sale, how much would you pay for it? And people were like, oh yeah, totally. And so it kind of took off from there. And I was doing like really the abstract landscapes alone. And I really enjoy doing that. And I was having fun doing that. And then, I was kind of looking to, expand what I was doing into other styles. And then the pandemic hit. And I kind of stopped painting because I think I was just really anxious, and wasn't sure what, COVID was going to look like. And was also worried because I also have asthma. And so I was worried, like, am I going to get taken out by this? Like I think I was just like really anxious for a month and couldn't do anything. And then after a month, and with everything being shut down and like, there's no gyms, there's no roller derby, there's no movie theaters, there's, nothing to really like take your time up in the day. I decided, well, I think I want to start painting again, but I think I want to start trying new stuff. And so then I started using the resin as a way to create a 3D effect. Then I started incorporating elements of collage and doing those sorts of things. And then also, I used to be a history teacher. And as a Native person, I always felt like we weren't honored in a way that we should be. And so I was like, well, I really like this picture, this photograph that I found. I really like the story behind the photograph. So now I'm going to incorporate that into my painting because I want to tell a story. And so from there, things have just kind of really taken off.
Nice. I like that. The idea of creating the story and taking it from pictures that are like meaningful and honoring those people.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I kind of was like, just like thinking about it, and I've always been kind of thinking about it. I used to be a history teacher, and I taught on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, and I taught in Lame Deer at the high school. And it was my first year of teaching, so I'm sure I was just awful, but I did like pick up some stuff. And we took part in like a march and I can't really remember what the march was, like what it was for, but we got t-shirts that said, "We are sacred people." And I still have the t-shirt, and I liked it because it was like bright yellow or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And so to like juxtapose that idea of like, a lot of times when people hear about like natives and they hear about Indians and the Indian wars, they have almost a romanticized view of Indian people, and they're like, oh, Sitting Bull and, you know, Chief Dull Knife, and oh, these guys are so amazing. And then the people that are descendants from those people aren't treated in a way that has any sort of respect a lot of the time, and they're treated really poorly. And so that was a weird idea of like, you know, these guys are the guys that won the Battle of Little Bighorn, and you go on History Channel and people are like falling over themselves about the Cheyenne and the Sioux and the Arapaho, and they're like, oh my gosh, they're just so great. And then you take your students to Billings for a field trip and they are just absolutely crapped on.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like bring honor to people.
I like that. Yeah. But that's a really interesting and unfortunate thing that I noticed too. Like, people romanticize, like they want to kind of keep Native people in that past glorified, like, you know, cowboys and Indians, you know, kind of way, and not really see that they're alive today and they're here. You know, and like they deserve the same respect. Like, they're still struggling and also thriving in different ways, like just navigating the world just like everyone else. And they deserve respect just like the people that you're falling all over from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really agree with that. So I like that you're giving Native peoples honor through art. I like that.
Me too. Thank you so
Thanks. I like it as well.
I've been talking a lot, so I'll let you.
Do you integrate like art therapy in your like sessions or anything that you do?
Sometimes they do really like access to my art supplies, and my office has a lot of art supplies. We haven't really, I mean, things have been kind of hard because I've been doing Zoom, and I don't want them to accidentally light themselves on fire when I'm not physically there. So it just kind of depends on the kid, you know, because some kids want, like, and some kids just want something fun to do, because it's boring in the group home, and they don't necessarily want to do art and therapy, but they do want a free canvas for sure. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I also want free canvases.
Yeah, and they see the like greatness that it can turn into, so they're like, ooh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah. So we could dive into the next question here. You've kind of talked a little bit about it, but how do you stay connected to your culture, or what does it mean to you to be your tribe, nation, band, your indigenous culture? Yeah. Or, I mean, like you said that you're also took up your husband's
Salish,
Sioux and Salish, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean for you to like to do all that and stay connected to all of that? How do you
for me, something that I've noticed, especially during like the time of COVID, is that I don't always think of myself just as me. I think of what is best for the group. You know, thinking about like, I can't just take care of my own household. I need to also do things that take care of other people, whether they know it or not. And there's not any payoff that comes back to that. It's just what you should do about like taking care of your loved ones. And then my husband's family is pretty traditional, and they have a lot of cultural practices that they still do. Some of them you can't do because it requires like a group right now, but still like just like daily cultural practices that you can take part in, like for example, smudging. you know, that doesn't require you to go anywhere or be around anybody. And remembering, really honoring people through their memory and through their history and retelling their stories. And, you know, keeping your relatives alive through that retelling of their lives and what was important and how they were strong and resilient. And that's also something that is pretty deep in Mexican culture as well, of like, you keep their memory alive and that's how you honor them. Even if the memory is like, you know, just like a funny story or like a crazy story, you know, and that's, I think, how I stay connected. And plus, my husband's family isn't that far away. Like, Missoula used to be Salish territory. And so, you know, I can drive like 20 miles or just visit people here. And there's that connection as well of like, people aren't that far away, you know?
Right. And that's true. Like when you stay connected to your ancestor or to your elders and your ancestors and just the people that come before you, like you're literally staying connected to that culture because it's, you know, your culture is what they gave you. So, yeah. So I agree.
So he's traditional or stays connected to his culture on the Salish side or both?
Mostly on the Salish side. His dad is Sioux, and he's from Pine Ridge. And so that's a little bit farther away. Every now and then he'll do things like call and like leave a message in Lakota. And it took me a while. When he first did that, I was like, what is this? Because I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then my husband like answered and was like, oh, he says there's basketball tonight, you know, like.
Oh, so he still speaks Lakota?
Yeah, he could understand it.
Okay.
But, you know, he's pretty far removed, so it's mostly just on his mom's side.
Okay.
And there's a lot of siblings and a lot of family that is just like really close. And they are very knowledgeable and pretty powerful people. So we are always kind of around them. Yeah,
and like just absorbing all the stories and teachings and everything. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So
that's pretty.
Sorry. No, you're
that's pretty interesting. I mean, you said that you're like Menti Chippewa Cree. I'm Chippewa Cree. And you were saying that you are now like more connected with the Salish and their way of life. I don't really know much. I mean, I know some things about their culture. It's a lot similar to ours, but they're different than us. They have different stories and different things. That could you talk a little bit about like learning a different culture other than your own, and how? I mean, why do you do that?
Why do you do that?
Oh, let me describe my life ethos really quick. I think because I grew up in Great Falls and my closest relatives lived in Shelby, you know, and my mom is so far like physically removed from her culture that growing up, I really just kind of felt like I was still singled out. And like a lot of times, like even in high school, in elementary school, there was more Native kids around, and I don't know what happened as I went on through the years, but like in high school and in middle school, there's times where I was the only non-white kid in class. And so I was always kind of looking for like a connection, just with like anybody, like some sort of solidarity, some sort of understanding of what it is to like have, like a non-white experience in a place where everyone except for you is white. And because of like how far we were removed physically from other people and from our relatives, really, I just felt like I was in a vacuum. And so when I came over here, I moved to Missoula for college and started going here and ended up, I wanted to be a firefighter and ended up being invited to go fight fire out of Ronan instead of Missoula. And I have some theories for the person who invited me to do that and why they did that, but they didn't tell me there was Missoula cruise. I could have figured it out, I guess. But like, they were like, yeah, I can get you up on a crew in Ronan, up on the Flathead Reservation. And so I ended up, just like by accident, being on an all Indian Montana firefighting crew. And was just kind of like immersed all of a sudden. And I loved it. Because like pretty much everybody on the crew was native of some different type. Most of them were Salish, but like you also had people that were from South Dakota. You had, people that are Crow, just like everywhere, just like a big mix. And so that's the first time that had happened to me, that I was like part of the dominant culture instead of like the minority in the room. And that was great. And so I was just like, this is awesome. This is best,
Yeah.
And also that first year, my husband happened to be on that crew. So that's how I met him when I was, like a freshman in college, basically. And didn't really know a whole lot about his family other than like his dad used to be a smoke jumper and his dad was also a firefighter. And so didn't know a whole lot, but then we started dating after the fire season was over. And then he just started being like, well, this is what we do. And this is like how my family operates. And you're dating me now, so you have to come with me to lodge because like that's not an option. And I was just like, yeah.
You're like, all right.
I've been waiting my whole life.
Nice.
So yeah, it like, and it's just kind of like learning with anything. I like broke some rules. I said things that I now know that I shouldn't have. And like, it was a pretty steep learning curve, but like I was just kind of immersed in it, and I was just like so happy to be around that.
Yeah.
Instead of just kind of like always the odd lady out.
Mm-hmm.
I get that.
Yeah.
Whenever Sophie was dating me, she moved back to the res with me, and then all the ceremonies that we would go to, she would come along learning, and there was a steep learning curve there too. So
yeah.
We said this before.
I was to be like, what do I do now? Like, because Tony would just get up and do something. I'm like, wait, like, what do I do?
So the first like funeral, or it was a wake that we went to.
I told us that.
Yeah, we said this before, but I like bringing it up because it's funny. But they're passing. We're passing around the grease from the food, and you're supposed to just take a little bit of the
like
grease.
everything else, you were taking like big spoonfuls,
and we're passing around the berries and all of that to eat, and everybody's like taking bites, and then they just take a little bit of the grease.
Yeah.
Sophie thought it was
something where you take a lot. I didn't know that it was grease.
She thought it was like I don't know.
So I took like a big spoonful of it.
Oh.
And they were like, no.
Yeah,
But I already like had it in my mouth.
What is it?
Like pudding or something.
Pudding,
yeah.
That applesauce.
Yeah, or something like that. I don't know.
Because it looks like applesauce, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't fully know everything, obviously. I mean, definitely not. But so there's still learning to do.
Yeah. I'm still learning about stuff, but I feel like, his family like really just like welcomed me and were like, okay, well, we're going to teach you how to do this now.
Yeah.
Now it's your turn. You're in charge now.
I love
I'm like, nope.
because you're going to carry the next generation and kind of help pass those teachings along.
Thanks for like sharing that with us, and that's not a lot of people would share some like personal stuff like that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Definitely.
Have you? I know that you're learning a lot of Salish, and are you learning like the language? And do you learn Sioux or no?
That okay, that's like a loaded question because I have been trying to learn Salish for like forever, and I can understand some words, but my pronunciation and how I understand you're supposed to say things and how you're actually supposed to say things
Okay.
are not apparently the same. And so I will try and say Salish words, and my husband will just laugh at me. He'll be like, yeah, you got it. I'm
You
like,
got it, sure.
listen, who else tries this hard? No one. So I try, but I know I'm really terrible, and that's okay.
At least you try.
I have the Salish app, and we have the dictionary, and I'm already really bad at languages. I know that. I just don't hold on to them very well. And so I've got that going against me as well. But I think it's interesting, and I try to learn as much as I can, but I know that I fail.
Maybe one day it'll just like start clicking.
Maybe, probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it sounds like
it
Salish.
hasn't yet.
So Salish is like, sounds like it's pretty easy to get a hold of, like the Salish language, like to learn it. There's like an app and stuff.
There is an app.
Oh, okay, so just that.
And it does have the words, and it has like, you can listen to like people say the words and stuff like that. But the actual structure to me is very difficult, and it's organized in a way that I don't quite understand.
Okay.
Not so like the resources are out there. Like you can try, but like unless you have kind of like an aptitude, I think it's hard.
Okay.
And that's also might be colored by just I think it's hard, and that's me personally.
I have a hard time with languages too, kind of.
So Salish is one of those languages that wasn't or didn't have a written language until fairly recently. So a group of like linguists from all over the world or whatever came together and came up with a written language for languages around the world that don't have written languages. They came up with like letters that correspond with sounds and correspond with
there's like
things.
Glottal stops involved, and the Salish language has like X's with a dot over it and L's that are crossed, and so it's a whole new language, like
whole
really
new alphabet.
So that alphabet was a whole bunch of linguists came together, and that alphabet is used for a bunch of different languages. Because some languages, even today, don't have written languages. They just were never written down. I know Chippewa and Cree, they have a written language, but they didn't really write anything down until fairly recently.
But they like had the written language.
They had the written language for. They're one of the oldest tribes to have a written language.
Oh yeah.
We just didn't write it down because it was told us that writing something down is it's powerful and it's permanent. Whenever you write something down, you want permanently. But whenever you're speaking, it's something that's flexible and kind of changes with time. And
that makes sense.
It's sacred to write something down, and you have to be really meaning.
Really sure.
Really sure that you have to write it down.
That makes sense.
That's why we didn't write things down. And I can't say that for all the tribes, but I'm pretty sure. I bet that it's something similar to that.
Yeah, maybe.
I think with us, there's certain things that aren't supposed to be, like, I guess you're not supposed to use technology for certain things, to like record them, because that takes away the sacredness. But I've never heard that before, but that makes sense. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
With the why you can't write things down. But yeah, I just don't think they ever.
Since like we're losing
now that people
language
are like learning it
and
again.
people are learning it. But back in the day, that's how you pass things down, was like verbally. You didn't really write anything down to pass it down.
There's
and like
no
you were
need.
saying,
especially since our stories have changed like very little over thousands of years. We're really good at storytelling, so you're not supposed to share a story unless you know the story. So that's something that the like Western world doesn't really understand, and they don't fully believe us whenever we tell these stories. And they're like, that didn't happen. It's like, well, we've been saying this story since the beginning of time, so I'm pretty sure and I'm pretty sure it's happened.
Yeah.
Seems like it might have. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we could move on to our next question here. But how do you navigate through this colonized space with your customs, language, traditions in mind in order to succeed at your passions, your job, your hobbies?
Living your life.
Just how you live your life.
I think that it's something that I'm drawing on almost all of the time, especially because I'm a therapist for kids, and most of these kids have had pretty difficult lives, and a lot of them have been abused, and they're wards of the state. And a lot of times there's a higher percentage of Native kids in foster care and in the system than there are by population. And so a lot of the times, like at least at work, once again, I might end up being the only person that's not white in the room. And the only person that also might understand some of the background of these kids and some of like where their culture is coming from and also some of what they have gone through. And so that's something that I'm always trying to use to make things, I guess, even though I work in a colonial system, to mitigate that. So it's not just like you were taken from your family and then you were raised by only white people the rest of your life who didn't understand your customs, they didn't understand what you would think was okay, what isn't okay, how you do things. And so that's something that I use all the time, especially in work. And then with my art, it's also something that I'm using all the time, because I really want to tell these stories and I really want to make it so that like everybody kind of understands. Like, I guess my friend April has a podcast called The Secret Layer. And I feel like that's kind of almost like Native history. Like people don't understand how things came to be where they are now. And so I want to expose all of that other stuff and explain like, hey, this is the history of this place. And everything is built from that. So that's something that I'm always using there too. And, you know, I think both of those things are pretty positive and I feel pretty good about them. Most of the time as you know, trying to wield my power as best I can for things that are good. And then it's also kind of weird to like contrast that with like how society sees me. Because sometimes those things aren't the same. You know, like, it's kind of a funny story, but it's also horrifying. I was sending out prints last week and got accused of stealing at the post office while I'm doing this. But I had already picked over poster tubes, basically. And they very nicely accused me of stealing the poster tubes. And I very nicely explained, no, I scanned them at the kiosk because it says you can scan and pay for products here on the side of the kiosk. It says it there. And so that's what I did because I was avoiding interactions like the one we had at the post office. So that's a weird thing too, to see yourself a certain way and then you go out into the community and it's really clear that other people don't see you that way, and it doesn't matter what you're doing and it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It's their problem, right? Like that's their viewpoint and their prejudices. And so that's something that I'm also reminded of, whether it's intentional or not.
Right.
Yeah, it's I've definitely felt that, getting followed around in a store just for being brown. Or I've had like the feeling like, why is that person looking at me? Are they like looking at me because like they think I'm up to no good, or is they look at
Or
me
Yeah.
because
appreciating my outfit or something.
or do they think I'm beautiful or something? I like to think that they think that I'm beautiful, but
I'm just
Yeah.
so good looking
Yeah.
that they followed me through a Target.
yeah, yeah. It's like, you want my number?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
So that's
I'm
something,
taking. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
And I think that's across the board with everybody, you know, and that happens to me too. Like, I'll go to a Target and I'll realize that, like, I used to work at Target, like, when I was in college. And so I kind of know how to tell who, like, the security people are, just because, like, I can tell who the security people are. But Target's also used to be my happy place, like, that I would go just to, like, chill out.
Yeah.
And so I would, like, go to every section in Target because I wanted to see what was in every section in Target. And then realized that somebody had been, like, watching me or following me. I'm like, buddy, you're going to be on a wild ride. Like, I'm going to hit nail polishes. I'm going to hit sporting goods. I'm going to go to men's clothing, and then I'm going to go back to nail polishes because I don't know about this color. Like, I'm going to be here for a minute.
Yeah.
So you might want to catch the people that are actually stealing. Like,
Right.
I'm just freaking weird.
Yeah.
I like doing that sometimes too.
Yeah. Same.
Definitely Sophie, but she
But, like-
likes to stay in one place for the longer, like looking
Yeah. I'll
at.
be like, "Is it this one or this one?"
Yeah, I do the same thing.
This one.
Especially if there's, like, a color that I'm not sure about. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
sage,
that's her.
olive, green, I
Like
don't
they're
know.
so similar, but they're so different.
Yeah.
I was just at Target, and she had me call her to, like, be like, oh, let me see what they have there. I'm like, I
How'd I
asked you
get-
if you wanted to come.
I had to get new lip bar.
Yeah.
The lip bar stuff. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, so
It is interesting, not interesting, like really depressing to think about the fact that, like, when I go to a store and there's like someone's like when me and Tony go to a store together and someone's like looks at us, I assume like, oh, they think I'm like really good looking or something. And then Tony like sometimes like, oh, they're staring at us because like I'm brown and you're white or something. I don't know. Like it's sad that those are like the two thoughts, like depending on like if you're a white person or a non-white person, you know what I mean? Because of people's stereotypes and prejudices and stuff. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like really,
Yeah.
but I guess
So,
Tony
yeah,
thinks-
there's always that question, like,
right.
is this racism or are you just a jerk?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
what is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What were you gonna, I kind of cut you off.
I lost my train of thought. That's all good.
It
I don't know.
happens.
Yeah. But I know Missoula is they're not outright racist. They're like racist behind the scenes and like back at
Yeah.
home and stuff. I mean, there's
Yeah, it's more on Montana where you would kind of
it's-
think that,
yeah,
not really out
wherever
here.
there's like a reservation, the town next to it is
Yeah.
really racist. Super
The
racist.
border towns are always pretty rough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
And that's,
Albert.
yeah, that's pretty much everywhere. And like people don't understand that technically Missoula is also a border town,
Yeah.
but you also have a lot of people that came from other places that are like, you know, really liberal hippies.
Mhm.
There are a
Um,
lot of hippies
but
there.
that doesn't mean that they understand Native history either.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they don't have like these ingrained like microaggressions that they, or like prejudices and stuff that come out as microaggressions, or you know just misunderstandings that just
Yeah.
are kind of tend to be more disrespectful, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like it here, but you know, it's still like, it's as progressive as Missoula wants to say that it is, like it still exists in a system that is inherently racist.
Yeah.
So there's only so much you can do,
Mhm.
you know? And so I, you know, to me, like the racism here a lot of the times is just like funny, you know, like I think it's kind of like humorous. But also I'm like, but that's, you know, a symptom of a much deeper problem, you know,
Right.
like a couple years ago, I was running a treatment team, and a lawyer showed up for one of the kids, and he had never seen me before. And if you just see my name, and my name's Monica Gillis, so like that's what it says on the email. You have no idea who is behind Monica Gillis. Like, phenotypically, culturally, you're just like, oh, like she's probably some Irish chick. And so he came to the group home, and this person didn't know that at the time I was the program manager who was running the meeting, and thought that I was like a cleaning lady. And was like, oh, I'm here to meet Monica. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Monica. That's me. Like, I just pick up after myself. What are you doing? Like,
I'm just a decent human being, and I don't put it all on the cleaning person.
Yeah. And so like stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, you've never seen a brown person in a position of power before, and that's why you just assume I'm here to clean the office. Right. Oh, okay. Like, it's funny, but it's also like,
it's like, oh,
microaggressions.
Yeah.
They're real fun.
They're
not, but
it's funny. It's good to make fun of them, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's also like make fun of them to point them out so that hopefully people can learn.
Yeah.
Or just to like rub off the pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really, I don't know, disappointing interaction.
And it's just kind of where we're at as a society, because there's just still so much, we still have so much work to do.
Right.
Everybody together,
Like you said, like getting more people of color, just non-white people that are not white in positions of power. And in different, different fields and different, businesses and companies, so that there's more representation, and then also so that people see that, people like CEOs are not just white men.
And whenever you have like little kiddos, they're looking up,
they can see like, oh, that could be me. So it gives them an example, like, oh, if they could do it, I could do it too.
Because there is a vacuum. Like, I was thinking the other day, and I didn't have a teacher that wasn't white until I was like probably a junior in college. Like, everybody, nobody, definitely not anybody was Indian until I started taking Native American studies classes. And like growing up in Great Falls actually has a pretty big Native population, but and they also have the base. So you have people from other like places that are moving to Great Falls for that. But like I just existed in that vacuum the whole time, And so I like to think that maybe there's some change, but I'm not really seeing it yet, as much as I would want it to be,
So when we talked to Tony's cousin, who is she's a teacher, a 5th grade teacher, and she really likes to incorporate a lot of Native lessons, like lessons that'll, what is that program called, Montana?
Indian Ed for All.
Yeah, and like really tries to fit in, relevancy to Native cultures into different lessons. And how do you think, like for you, because I know you said that you have had a lot of white teachers, mostly white teachers and white classrooms. Like, did you guys learn about Native cultures at? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, like same here, and
there was like a paragraph, usually in our textbooks, and it usually was about the Aztecs, which is cool, but it's one paragraph, right? I would go to school and they would talk about Thanksgiving, and I would come home with like my little turkey hand, and then my dad would be like, no, come here. Like, this is the actual story. Like, you need to understand this. And, there wasn't a whole lot, which is terrible, because we also had to take Montana history. And so in middle school, I'd be sitting in class, and I could be sitting in class with like maybe 7 other kids from 7 different tribes, right? And there would be no mention of their importance at all, or acknowledgement, really. I think now they might talk about the reservations a little bit, but my fear is that it's what's called tour and detour, where they do it for a week in September and then say, oh, we did Indian Ed for all. We're done now.
Yeah.
We're cool. We colored a map. And now we're done teaching about Indians, and we can move on to the important stuff.
Right. And then that's like the only place they fit is just like in this one section. Like,
and it's always in the past, and it's never, people are important now. And you also get a paragraph about the Cherokee. I almost forgot about that. So you get the Aztecs and the Cherokee, and you sit next to a Chippewa Cree kid, you sit next to a Blackfeet kid, and you sit next to a Cheyenne kid, and nobody talks about it. So I didn't get any education. In fact, one of the things I distinctly remember in school is I was in middle school for sure. And there was like a line all of a sudden. I think I read ahead or something like that. And there was a line in my textbook or whatever was assigned, and it was about Sand Creek, right? And so it's Sand Creek Massacre, which occurred with the Cheyenne over in the Colorado, Nebraska area. I'm pretty sure it's in Colorado. And the U.S. government essentially opened fire on women and children who were told to go to a certain area and be protected by the U.S. government. And then they went to that area and shot them and attacked them. And so it's commonly known as Sand Creek Massacre, but it said Sand Creek Battle in my book that I was reading. And so I also happened to... So I happened to be reading a book and was actually somewhat traumatized about it. That was all about Sand Creek. And so I brought it up to my teacher, who was a really great teacher. She actually made me really motivated to come to class, and she was really welcoming and essentially taught her butt off. But when I brought it up, I'm like, the textbook says this, but it's actually Sand Creek Massacre. They opened fire on people. Like, I was a traumatized little eighth grader or something.
Well, it's good you brought it up though too.
And her response to me was not what I expected. I thought that she was going to stop class and be like, oh, you guys, there's a mistake in the textbook. We need to talk to the company. This isn't what happened. This is the true history. And her response was, I don't know anything about that. You need to sit back down now. And so I just got slammed essentially and was just like, I trusted you.
Right. It's like a slap in the face from someone that you, like you said, you trusted and you really enjoyed.
I admired her and was like, we're going to talk about the true history. I trust that she can do this. And she probably didn't have any idea what I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Cause she also hadn't been taught that, but I was like, I thought we were going to have a discussion.
Yeah. Maybe she could have been like, oh, tell me about it or something, about the truth, what you know about it. But she just kind of, she didn't know, but she didn't want to. It's like she didn't want to even. Yeah,
she was just like, you need to sit back down and get blah 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 done. And I was So that describes my experience.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that describes a lot of Native people's experience in school. I'm sure. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe people who are not on. Even on a reservation, there's a lot of white teachers too. So
yeah, I mean, we didn't really learn a bunch of. I went to school that was primarily Native Americans from 5th grade on up, but I didn't really learn anything
about Native.
about my culture. I mean,
anything.
we did have Cree as a class, but I mean, not in history. There wasn't really very much information about us, and so that's sad stuff. And I also went to Great Falls School for half of my 5th grade year. So
which one?
I don't remember what it's called. It's you're going down the what's that main street? Once you get into Great Falls, coming from like Havre area, you're going down you go past the Walmart, and you keep on going straight, and then the road kind of veers right and left, and left is where what is that McDonald's and Subway.
Yeah.
If you go right, there's a middle school there. That's the middle school I went to.
Oh, okay. I think it's North Middle School.
Doesn't sound familiar. I don't know.
Anyway,
we could figure it out later. I don't know.
Small world still.
Yeah.
People, if people are in like Michigan or something, they're probably like, "What are they talking about?"
Yeah.
Why does she want to know the middle school? Like, I'm just interested.
Yeah.
So we can. This is our last question. But
Okay.
what do you want to leave our audience with? What do you?
We like to do like a final thoughts.
Yeah,
kind
your
of.
final thoughts. It could be about pretty much anything we talked about. Anything you want to bring up, or anything you just want to say? Pretty much anything.
Oh, geez, I don't know. I feel like I'm on Jesus and Marrow, and I'm supposed to come up with my sign, and I don't know what my sign should say. I don't know if you guys watch Jesus and Marrow. But
oh no, I didn't know.
Oh, it's funny.
I just laughed. I didn't know what you said. Really, so that describes me.
Yeah. I guess that it's everyone's responsibility to understand Native history,
Right.
and it's not just Native's job to teach you
Right.
about what happened. That as a citizen of the United States or Canada, really you owe it to your fellow citizens to understand people's backgrounds and what has occurred, and it'll actually be better for them as well, because they'll have a more knowledgeable base to make their decisions off of.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's all I have to say.
I like that.
I like that
That's
too.
perfect. Because everywhere you could be in the United States
Canada
has
or
been,
Mexico.
or in Canada, Mexico, anywhere in the world, really, but
Yeah.
Has been a native territory, a native land, So
And there's
it's
probably Native people living there, and you just don't
right.
realize it.
Right.
You don't acknowledge it.
Like out here in Michigan, like there's not huge reservations or anything. There's not, at least in Detroit area, I don't know that there's a huge Native population, but that I just could be unaware. But I didn't even know growing up that there were any reservations or anything in Michigan even. Like because I grew up going out west a lot with my family, like traveling to Montana, and so I knew there were was more Native presence out there. But yeah, like anyway, I don't know why I started talking about that, but like there could, like you said, there could be natives living here that I just don't even know.
And like in a lot of cities, there are people that were part of the relocation program.
Okay.
And so there's lots of urban Indians, is what, sometimes the term is.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that either.
Yeah.
So educate yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that final thought. That's
me too.
Because that's what we want to do with this podcast is, have conversations with people who are Indigenous and can give their own perspective. But we want to like inspire and encourage and motivate people who are Native or non-Native to just learn more about that culture. So that's a perfect final thought to leave us with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, we talked about your art and everything. How could people find you?
Oh yeah.
What is your do you use a hashtag or in here?
You can find me.
Stuff?
I'll have to look it up because I sometimes have weird spaces. I'm on Instagram at BringsYellow Horses, but there's an underscore between yellow and between horses.
Okay.
And I'm also on Facebook at BringsYellow Horses, but I think it's all one word. And on Instagram it says Monica, and then it says Mo. Gilles-BringsYellow, and that's me. So that's where you can find me. I'm working on coming up with a website that is just like devoted to art, but I'm trying to get my brother to do it for me because I think that he should, and he thinks that he should do his own stuff.
Okay. So there's a little, not miscommunication, but
yeah. I'm the older sister, and so I'm trying not to bully him, but I will if I have to.
His brother, get on it. No, I'm just kidding.
I could give you a little advice. So how we did it is we went on.
How he did it,
well,
you should say.
So we just we went through Google and we bought our URL, and for that's like was $15 for the year, and then
pretty cheap.
You can use Google's own services to develop your website, and it's free.
Yeah, he keeps
awesome.
Just
if
developing it more and more, and it's
go check out our website, and it's pretty simple. It's smudgeforyourthoughts.com, and you can navigate through all that stuff, and it's pretty simple stuff. And then once you have I don't know.
You can hit us up for questions if you have, because he's really
and
really
if you
good at this kind of stuff.
You can. There's other website services out there, but some of them get really pricey, like $700 for you to use their services for a year or whatever. But for $15 for 1 year,
that's not too bad.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty low tech. Like I can eventually figure stuff out, but I wouldn't say that I'm savvy at things. So I don't want to get too involved.
Right. Templates on there already. So so it's a cheap way to do it, and it works.
Yeah. Good advice. I'll tell my brother.
I was gonna say that. Like, just be like, hey, like I bought this website. Can you like put it together for me now?
This is what you're doing.
This is your project. That's funny.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Monica, for being on our podcast.
No problem. This was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun getting to know you and talking with you and learning some stuff that we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. We'll let you go. Have a good evening and a good weekend.
You too.
Bye. And we'll talk more on Instagram, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Just stay in touch. All right.
All right.
Hi.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. We hope you guys enjoyed that episode.
We did.
We enjoy every episode, let's be honest.
Yeah, we do.
So we just wanted to say thank you for listening and all the support that we get.
From all of you guys.
Yes. And please check out.
Can I do it? All right.
Please check out our website, www.asmudgeforyourthoughts.com. From there, you can find us and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And Twitter and all the
TikTok,
other TikTok,
but we don't have anything posted there, so just don't.
We don't.
It's okay.
All of those things, but you can find us on all that stuff.
Okay.
Find all of our links on our website.
Yeah, you can find it there. If you or anyone you know would like to be on our podcast, please fill out the simple form that can be found on that website. Or you can always just email us at contact@asmudgeforyourthoughts.com, or you can message us on Instagram or Facebook. If you know our number, you can call us.
Yeah.
But
get in contact with us
if you want to reach me.
Yeah, get in contact with us if you want to be on the episode or on an episode, or know somebody who would be a good fit for being on here. So never mind. Yeah, with that, we'd like to thank Mary Kay for designing our logo, and shout out 8th Generation for our backdrop. Now, we really like this backdrop, and we really like 8th Generation. They did not provide us this blanket, but we just like who they are. They are inspired natives, not native inspired.
Yeah.
And we'd also like to thank Ogimau Kihiu, the late Roddy Sunchild Sr., for the words in our song. He just gave these songs to, or he gave me these words whenever I was just a little kid, and good things to live by. So yeah.
I also just want to shout out for this episode, because I'm wearing it, Jamie Okuma's fashion brand. I just recently got this, so I love it, and you guys should go check her out. Yeah. Check out her designs. They're amazing.
Yeah, so
J.O.
shop
Kuma.
Indigenous.
Yeah. All right. Peace. Oh, with that, Gigawabaman.
See you later.